afternoon, good evening, good morning. Sweden has cut development aid to Zimbabwe and 4 other countries to divert money to Ukraine. I think many Zimbabweans out there who have been following world events cannot be surprised. The honest truth is, we all saw this coming. And when it does come, of course, we are disappointed. And to be fair, Sweden is not the first one to cut its aid. First one to do so was America, when it cut US aid to most countries, not only in Africa, but in many other parts of the world. So we have seen this coming. What we'd like to discuss tonight is, what does that mean to the ordinary person who was the beneficiary of this aid? What does that mean to the nation, to Zimbabwe? And most significantly, what are we going to do about it? Ben, welcome to the program.
Good day to you and good day to everybody. I just want to, go back a bit and refresh our viewers. During this week, we had a discussion where I mentioned that, the Zimbabwean government had a local debt of almost $2 billion. And this included, the old BIM, which is, a fund that is, for children with, who cannot afford basically, and they're supposed to be paying their tuition and education basically. So this development where Sweden has just cut development aid could not be a bad time. It's going to be felt. Government is really not playing any part. I mean, if you're not able to pay not only the BIM, but ZIMSEC as well, after the children have written their exams, they are not paying. So now you kind of get a picture to say this withdrawal of such crucial aid is really going to be felt by not government, obviously, because they are well pampered and taken care of, but the ordinary citizens that were benefiting from the aid. It's going to be very, very difficult for Zimbabweans out there.
Well, that is one aspect. The other aspect, of course, is that some of the aid was indeed going directly to individuals. It's not uncommon to hear that, US aid, it was directed at buying medicines. And in some of these cases, the money was allocated, the medicine was bought and was delivered and then was given to government to distribute. And when that aid was taken away, it meant there was no more money to buy those medications. And the individual at the coalface will feel the pinch. Because what we have got to remember here is that most of these people were getting help from foreign aid because their own government was failing to meet their needs. So these people will feel it, and there's no doubt about it. But the other issue that must be mentioned here is that some of this aid went to government, just government to government. And one of the problems that has been said on numerous occasions is the way our Zimbabwean ZANU-PF government is used. Yes, some of that aid is put in a big pot together with ZANU-PF or government's own contribution. So it's not clear that, for instance, some of that money that has been used to buy motor vehicles was directly from the money that was given as aid. No one can prove that. But nonetheless, when a government is spending billions of dollars on buying cars for its ruling elite, when it's failing to provide some of the most basic needs of their citizens, those who are giving the aid have to sit up and say, do these people really need our aid, or are they just taking advantage of us? So that is one aspect that most people out there cannot deny is an important issue.
You know, we got to add the fact that in the past, and we've heard about, you know, ZANU-PF politicizing this aid, where, especially in rural areas, if you want to get, you know, a share of the aid, you know, be it, you know, maize, rice, or whatever, you have to show, you know, proof of ZANU-PF membership. You have to have a ZANU-PF card, and you have to be in their books. And if you're a known, you know, opposition member, you are not going to get any. So, to me, this whole development where we are now seeing, you know, international, you know, donors pulling out, I think, you know, the writing was on the wall. It's rather frustrating where, you know, you are giving out and then you are seeing in news reports, social media, and everything, the speeches that come from these ZANU-PF officials, you know, they spread hate speech. I mean, here's somebody that has given you something, you know, to give to your people, and at the end or in between the speech, you're castigating the West, you know, that kind of thing. But I just gave you the food, you know. It kind of frustrates, and I'm not surprised really that, you know, they have decided, you know, to tighten their pockets, you know, and throw us out. I really do feel sorry for the ordinary person that, you know, was kind of benefiting from this, because I believe, you know, with the type of government that we have, where we can see, you know, the health sector is deteriorating. When you go into a hospital, you don't expect to find any medicines anymore. You know, if you find medicine in a hospital, it's a shocker. The moment you are admitted or you need, you know, assistance, they are directing you to private pharmacies to go and look for your own medicines. It has gone to an extent of where for women who are giving birth, they have to bring candles because there's no lighting. Zesa will be gone, you know. And then top it off, you have a government that will ignore such, abnormalities and be ready to spend so much money on almost 700 vehicles, give each other $500,000 loans, amongst many other perks that they pamper themselves. So it's going to be very difficult because you really don't have a government that has the people, at heart. So it's kind of, we are all on our own, and we shouldn't expect much from our government. We really shouldn't expect to say, because aid has now gone, ZANU-PF government is going to step up. That is just wishful thinking. They will never do that. In fact, they will continue. It's as business as usual. Each man for himself and God for us all. So I really do feel sorry and, anxious for those people who really needed this.
Well, one of the issues that was raised in that decision by Sweden to withdraw aid to Zimbabwe was that they're diverting their finances to helping Ukraine. To those who have not been following the war in Ukraine, has gone on and on. And at the present moment, it is clear that Ukraine is on the losing side. As much as Europe had wanted to help Ukraine, the reality is becoming too obvious to ignore. Ukraine is a small country compared to Russia. And while the West, including America and Europe, have helped Ukraine with weapons, the one thing that Ukraine wanted is manpower, because this turned out to be a war of attrition. Russia has used its superior manpower and has been pounding Ukraine to the point now where that country's manpower has depleted significantly, and the West's flow of weapons has slowed down too. So the rhetoric of supporting Ukraine by the West is really finished. Ukraine is now having to face the reality of negotiating with Russia and giving it what it wants. And that is, of course, has worried the rest of the European countries of what would Russia do next. And so one of the reasons why the rest of Europe is really increasing their expenditure on weapons is because of that. The victory in Ukraine for Russia could embolden that country to do other things. And no European country can rule out, particularly those very close to Russia, can rule out that Russia may not turn on them. And so the need by the European countries to defend themselves has become urgent. And so one should not be surprised to hear countries like Sweden saying, no, we are now going to concentrate on supporting Ukraine and building our own defense system. Expenditure on military has increased considerably in Western Europe ever since the Ukraine war started. And it has assumed even greater agency when it became clear that Ukraine is losing.
The war in Ukraine is a rather sad, state of affairs. The real reason behind, this destruction of once a beautiful country, is just all political. It's senseless when you really look at it. Say, this is what we are fighting for. And then you look at what you have destroyed, the amount of lives that and livelihoods you have destroyed. Now we have Ukrainians all over the world as refugees, basically. And here, you touched on a very important, aspect to say most countries now, because of this development, have increased their arsenal. They have now made sure that they multiply, their reserves in terms of warfare and all that. So countries, that had money to give away are finding that, we cannot afford to give other countries now. Rather, we need to protect our own and our citizens. So it makes sense. You got to prioritize home first. There's no way you can, go and do good elsewhere and forget your own people. So it all comes together, at the end of the day, that one has to prioritize their own well-being before the next. And unfortunately, it all comes down to the ordinary citizen of Zimbabwe that was benefiting from this, aid. And it's not, like we said, it's not just Sweden. We had America, US aid, which was very big. And I'm sure, a lot of Zimbabweans out there have seen foodstuffs with that name written on top, that has been withdrawn, and its impact is not being shown, but I am sure it is being felt by the ordinary person out there.
I think many people will be asking, how did we get here? The genesis of this came with the election of US President Donald Trump last year, 2024. His mantra of America first has thrown away or has shaken the world order that he made from the Second World War to its foundation. Whereas the economic relationship used to be one of, based on Adam Smith, of win-win kind of policies. What Donald Trump was emphasizing was America first. And this is at the heart of what we are seeing now. Before Donald Trump was elected, the West and NATO in general could count on the US to stand up to Russia. But with the election of Donald Trump, that all changed. Suddenly, the NATO countries in Europe could no longer count on America. And Russia sensed that. And they've taken advantage of that. I think what we are seeing now is a new world order where the assumed understanding of the World Trade Organization and so forth, those are now adhered to if it's only to your advantage. If it's not, disregarded. Whereas in the past, maybe America had got away with ignoring international laws. Now, with the election of Donald Trump, that came to the fore. People have felt it even more closely than ever before. So international law counts for nothing now. I think what we can say now is we've got a new world order where the primeval, edgy survival of the meanest has taken center stage. And those of us in the third world countries who cannot stand up to some of these developed countries will be taken advantage of. There's no doubt about it. Russia has been emboldened more than ever before. If it can do this in Ukraine, I think we are looking at a situation where it will try to do the same thing in many African countries. It will start thinking of carving its own areas of influence in Africa. And we know that some of our leaders are tempted by that. The backing of Russia and China has been one of the biggest problems for Africa ever since many African countries gained their independence. Those countries felt they could do whatever they like as long as they've got the backing of Russia and China. And I think that backing now has been emboldened. The idea that we can say to a leader like Mnangagwa, we want free, fair, and credible elections. He knows that he can get away with rigged elections because he will have the backing of Russia and China. In other words, the future is as dark as you like. We really don't know what it holds, but we know it's going to be rough from henceforth.
And I think, if we were to be frank and clear to our viewers out there, I think the world is going to be forced to change, to take or to choose between two sides, NATO and BRICS. So BRICS is mainly, I would put it across as the look east guys, and the west for NATO. And then we can see the clear picture now, where Africa is leaning towards BRICS. I mean, we have seen, since applications by some African countries wanting to join the BRICS nations. This obviously doesn't sit well with the West. And I think it also then comes down to, we are helping you guys, but then you are shunning us. You are going to the rival. It becomes very, very challenging and very difficult for them to continue helping us going forward. So it's just going to, be a tighter squeeze going forward. So the world is changing. And I mean, if you were to choose between the two, it is very difficult because now we have the Chinese that are doing so much damage in Africa. It's as if they want to loot now and there's no tomorrow. So it's really going to change our ways of life and how life used to be when the dust settles at the end.
Well, I think one of the things that is going to happen also is, what we should not ignore here is that for a country like Zimbabwe, we have received a lot of aid from the Western countries for the last 45 years. Particularly some of that aid that went from government to government. We will have very little to show for it. That is the tragedy of a country like Zimbabwe. We should have looked at aid in the same way that post in the World War II, Germany and Japan looked at the Marshall Plan. They used that money to revive their nation's economy after the devastating World War. And within 20 years, both Japan and Germany were strong economies. Whereas in the case of Zimbabwe, after 45 years of independence, we still have got very little to show for all the aid that we received from the West. Indeed, some people have said that aid has been abused by leaders like Mnangagwa and Mugabe. Instead of concentrating on reviving the economy, they relied on aid to help look after their own people while they wasted the nation's resources recklessly. And now going forward, we really have to say now we have got to look at paying for the development ourselves without any help. And not only that, most of those even developed countries will not be trading generously with a country like Zimbabwe. They'll be looking at getting the maximum they can. And in a country where nothing is transparent, I think we can honestly say the chances are that corruption and mismanagement are only going to get worse. because now both countries in the East, notably China and Russia, and those in the West, America and Europe, will be looking at what is the best deal we can get for, say, lithium. If they can bribe the leaders to give them the lithium for half the price, they will do so. And in a country where corruption at the top is rampant, that is something we really have to worry about. So this whole new political order has thrown new challenges for countries like Zimbabwe. If there is one big challenge we have to face, it is how are we going to get a competent government going forward? Because that is the only way we are going to stop being exploited. We failed to get it this last 45 years. How are we going to get it going forward? That is a question that most people should seriously think about now.
I mean, if you look at it, Zimbabwe, well, ZANU-PF, when they are speaking, they've been signing mega deals. And I'm sure there are mega deals that are being signed, with Russia, China, and so forth. But, with these bilateral agreements, we are finding out that only one side seems to be developing from these arrangements. I mean, take for example, China is super booming right now, and Zimbabwe is a shell shadow of itself. Then you kind of try and weigh to see, is this, mega deal or mega deals, are they, working for us? And the answer is no. Why? Probably because, our country, we got corrupt leaders, and probably they spend it on unnecessary things. But then you go on to the ground as well, where you find Chinese are doing business, whether it be mining or whatever. Just the state of the employees that are working, Zimbabwean local employees that are working, they are really being treated badly. They are not being paid well either. And the work on the ground, when you see the devastation in terms of environment-wise, you can see Zimbabwe at the end of the day is on the losing side of these so-called mega deals. And unfortunately, it's not only in Zimbabwe. Countries like Zambia are feeling the same thing. We spoke a couple of weeks or months back, where a Chinese company spilled toxic waste in a water body, a big water supply, and it was just quickly patched by the Zambian government to try and normalize things. Don't worry, it's not going to hurt you, and so forth. And that was it. In this battle between the East and the West, poor Africa is going to be the one that is going to sponsor the battle through their raw materials. Is going to be the one, to lose everything. Because, I mean, we're talking of all major countries wanting to expand their military, wealth and arsenal. They obviously need funds to do that. And which better place to find, cheap raw materials and money from, except Africa. So when you look at the bigger picture, whichever side we are going to be choosing, it's going to be between a rock and a hard place. And I don't blame entirely the two, factions that are fighting. I blame ourselves. I'll give you an example. Zimbabwe at independence, when the country was good, it was on its way to be the next Singapore. It had everything going for itself. ZANU-PF came in. The first order of business was, let's spend on ourselves. Let us pamper ourselves. And then later, let us bribe. And then from there, we know the rest. We are living it. And this is the case with most African countries. I mean, you always show us the map of GDP of African countries. Very few have got a good GDP per capita. The rest, people are living in abject poverty. It's only going to get worse. I mean, look, I think the map there says it all. It's small patches of green, healthy, economies. The rest is struggling. It's only going to get worse when the bolts are getting tightened. We started with America withdrawing, aid. Now it's Sweden. Tomorrow it's another, and now we're also having the big so-called superpowers fighting the small powers. We know South Africa and the US right now are not in good books. The situation is getting worse. And unfortunately, we have a government in Zimbabwe where they do not see the developments that are happening. That this is the time where you're supposed to be bracing yourselves for the impact, or bracing yourself, for a tighter time that is coming. Because I believe with all this that is happening, it's just going to get worse. And we have governments all across Africa that are not prepared. And guess what? When it does happen and the situation gets hard, it's obviously going to start in Africa, because we're already failing badly. I mean, Zimbabwe right now has got no medicines in their hospital. Since independence, Zimbabwe does not even, manufacture, or process any drugs locally. We don't have any industry to fall to say, we can do this, we can do that. Our industries have all closed. So when the times get hard and the push gets, going, how do you think Zimbabwe is going to fare? It's going to be, dog eat dog affair. That's how I see it.
Thank you, Ben. I've shown this picture of President Trump with his counterparts, President of Mexico and Canada. The headline there was North American leaders take stage together for the first time. I started by saying that the election of President Trump has shaken the world order. President Trump had a going with literally every nation on earth, including his neighbors, Canada and Mexico. He imposed sanctions, tariffs, you name it, on them, ignoring the agreements that had been drawn up and that had worked for so long. On this occasion, they got together because the three countries are going to host the World Cup next summer. The one occasion when the three countries can work together. The fact still remains that post the World War II, the election of President Trump has really shaken the world order to its very foundation. Other countries are closing doors, are looking inward. And if America is saying America first, they too are forced to think of themselves first. And in that environment, the weak will be trampled upon. If there was ever a need for Zimbabweans to sit up and pay attention and say, our political system has failed, and we really, really need to do something about it, it is now. We cannot carry on the way we have carried on these last 45 years. The economic, political, and social challenges ahead of us are coming thick and fast. And if there was ever a time when we needed to have a democratic and accountable and competent government, it is now. We can change Zimbabwe, like Ben referred to earlier on, had the potential to become the South Korea of Africa in 1980. We missed that. We can still change it. All we need is end this case of rigged elections and bad governance. We have said it on this platform, but it's worth saying again. The opportunity to do so is within our own grasp. In the past, we have participated in flawed elections to give ZANU-PF legitimacy. Let's get to our senses. We should stop this madness of participating in flawed elections to perpetuate the dictatorship. We do not have to participate in a flawed election, which we know is flawed, which we know if we participate, we give the vote rigging ZANU-PF legitimacy. That is not rocket science. That is common sense. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.